Thank you again for being here. My name is Catherine Blakespear, and I'm the state senator representing the 38th District, which is parts of San Diego and Orange County. The state of California is in the midst of an ongoing, slow-moving, endemic humanitarian crisis of street homelessness that continues to get worse month after month and year after year. The lack of real, meaningful progress is sickening. I've been saying for years now, first as a mayor and now as a senator, that for us to make significant progress toward eliminating street homelessness, we need to truly own the problem. We need a clear goal to get to functional zero in street homelessness, and we need an action plan and metrics to get us there. It very much aggravates me that no jurisdiction and no level of government is taking responsibility for doing this. And meanwhile, on any given night, around 200,000 Californians are living unsheltered in our public spaces. That is nearly half of the total of unsheltered people in this entire nation here in California. And it's apparently no one's problem, and therefore it's become everyone's problem. Well, it is time for this to stop. And we have two bills to highlight today that really move the needle. We know that the solution to homelessness is to build more housing. But let's get real. Despite many years of recognizing this, we are simply not building permanent housing anywhere near a pace that is close enough to make a real difference for the people living in our parks and canyons and riverbeds. We have to recognize that the status quo of how we are approaching homelessness is not working. But what is working is what San Jose Mayor Matt Mahan, here behind me, is doing, and what Dignity Moves is doing, also here. They are moving the needle. You will hear from both of them directly, but in short, what they are doing is they are creating interim housing as quickly as possible to move people out of encampments and into a place that provides a roof and a bathroom and some personal dignity. Now, what exactly is interim housing? They are tiny homes or mobile units that are not designed to be forever homes. They are homes for now. They are homes for tonight. And you can see them here in these posters right here. These are all examples of interim housing. They are a heck of a lot better than a thin blanket or a piece of cardboard or a tent with no bathroom. Interim housing is an important first step to actually solving the street homelessness crisis. As we know, many people who have been homeless need help to get back on their feet. They need services such as healthcare, drug treatment, or counseling. Providing these services is expensive and can be a barrier to building interim housing in the first place. Cities need help to make this happen, and that's why I'm authoring SB 16. This legislation would require that counties partner with cities to provide the support for operations of the interim housing facilities. Specifically, the bill would require counties to cover 50% of the costs of operating interim housing and shelter. Throughout the state, social services are provided by counties. They are not provided by cities. And that's why it makes no sense to expect cities to provide all of the social services that are needed for people who are staying in shelters or in interim housing units. In fact, cities and counties do partner to some extent in this area, but it is highly uneven and it's highly variable by county, and frankly, it's not nearly enough. In San Diego County, for instance, 2 shelters are jointly run by the county and the city, but there are 21 other shelters that are only run by the city. Statewide, we need to align our funding and our priorities around what Senator Josh Becker's bill, SB 606, requires, which is getting to functional zero for unsheltered street homelessness. We've seen, thanks to Dignity Moves and others, the power and effectiveness of interim housing of getting us to this goal. We've seen some cities like San Jose and San Francisco aggressively pursuing this type of housing, and they are beginning to move the needle. But the operational expenses for this housing and services are too much for strained city budgets to bear. We need better regional collaboration and coordination on planning how to eliminate street homelessness, and there needs to be the regional sharing of costs. It's time for the state to take this next step in owning the problem, marshaling the resources, and requiring the regional cooperation needed to get all California's unsheltered into shelter now, tonight. These two bills, SB 16 and SB 606, help make that happen. And finally, before I turn it over to Senator Josh Becker, I want to say a big thank you to the Grocers Association and the Bay Area Council for their engagement and advocacy on this effort. And now I'll turn it over to my friend and colleague, Senator Josh Becker. Thank you.
I want to thank Senator Blakespear for her leadership and that warm introduction. I told her she could say that I was in high school as vice president of the math team, but I guess she Didn't think that was an important part of the introduction. But wonderful to be here today. We actually thought it might be raining, which would have illustrated the need to get everyone indoors. But I'm glad that it's not, so that you can see all the examples of the interim units that are being deployed now across the state. And we are in the midst of a moral and humanitarian crisis on our streets. And that's not news. What is news is that we now know we can solve it. We now know that we can end unsheltered homelessness. And that's what this press conference is all about, and that's what my bill is all about. People are dying in public, suffering trauma. California has the largest percent of unhoused people in the world. 78% of our homeless population is unsheltered. 78%. Nationally, that's 20%. In New York City, for example, it's 5%. So this is a California problem, and we need a California solution. People sleeping outside are 40% more likely to be victims of physical violence, and twice as likely as those in shelter of being victim of sexual violence. So it's not just about housing, it's about survival, it's about stability, it's about safety. And if we do believe this is a crisis, then we need to treat it like a crisis. We can't just sit back and wait to build enough permanent housing, although we're trying as fast as we can to do so. We need to treat this like a crisis. And interim housing, we now know, we've shown over the last few years, is that missing rung between unsheltered homelessness and permanent homes. Provide safe, stable housing where people can get mental health treatment. They can have an address to have their medicine delivered. They can have an address for job applications. Our goal is functional zero. Functional zero. That's a system where there are enough beds for everyone. It's a pretty simple concept, but again, not one that I think anyone thought was possible a number of years ago. We've always viewed this, I think, just as an intractable problem that, well, honestly, probably never gets solved. But now we know we can. Cities like San Jose, led by our mayor here, Matt Mahan, have shown, they've done the hard work to calculate how many beds are necessary to bring everyone indoors. How many beds are necessary, and then can they do it? And he'll talk about, they've about 2,600 beds in San Jose. They're going to do 1,000 this year alone of interim housing of various types. So we're seeing huge advancements. So number one, this bill requires that everybody, we now know we can achieve it. Let's require folks to plan for it so we actually have an end to unsheltered homelessness. Second, last year I passed a bill unanimously here in the legislature that had created a lot of streamlining. It extended the State's Shelter Crisis Act and therefore let cities avail themselves of streamlining procedures. Unfortunately, many regions are not taking advantage of the flexibilities in last year's SB 1395. So this bill requires regions to articulate certain factors. Do they have a shelter crisis declaration that's valid in effect? Have they taken steps to reduce interim and permanent housing project approvals? Have they waived local fees and not put on $100,000 fees per bed on some of these units, as some cities have done? So that's really the second part. Are we effectively using the streamlining procedures that this legislature unanimously voted on? The third is include smaller cities in regional plans. And I represent a lot of small cities, have had good talks with our county executive, Mike Callaghy, about this very bill. So this bill would reinstate the inclusion of small cities in the regional planning process. So to make sure that all cities, big cities and small cities, are part of this regional approach to end unsheltered homelessness. That's why I'm so excited. I have a lot of important things I think I'm working on this year. I'm incredibly passionate about this because it's an innovative solution, and we now see, in California fashion, we have an innovative solution that we can all get behind, and we can end unsheltered homelessness. And here, I'm going to bring up a man who is probably president of his math team. I don't know, maybe not just vice president. No, I'm going to bring up someone who is showing us that this can be done, how it can be done. Please welcome Mayor Matt Mahan.
Thanks, Senator. I do like math, but thanks, Senator Becker. I am so grateful to Senator Blakespear and Senator Becker for their leadership here in Sacramento, for demanding that we have a statewide framework that includes everybody doing their fair share to end this humanitarian crisis. Thank you all for being here this morning. When I became mayor of San Jose, I made a commitment to stop waiting on perfect solutions and start building practical ones. We stopped focusing only on what we wished we could build and started building what we can. That meant faster, more cost-effective interim housing. That meant rethinking how we use public land. And that meant getting more people off the streets faster and onto a better path. In fact, just in the 500 units of new interim housing that we have built since the onset of the pandemic over the last 5 years now, we have served well over 2,000 people, over 70% of whom remain off the streets today, years later, nearly half of whom have graduated to permanent housing solutions. And now, as Senator Becker mentioned, this year, San Jose is on track to open an additional 1,000 interim shelter and housing placements, more than any other city on the West Coast. But here's the hard truth. Even if we built enough shelter for every single person currently living outdoors in San Jose, we still would not end the era of encampments. Because homelessness doesn't stop at city limits, and neither can our solutions. That's why I'm proud to stand here today as a co-sponsor of Senator Catherine Blakespear's SB 16, the Homeless Center Cost Sharing Act, and Senator Josh Becker's SB 606, the Functional Zero Unsheltered Act. Senator Blakespear's bill is rooted in a basic principle. When cities build shelter, counties should step up to help operate them, particularly by funding case management services. This only makes sense given that counties are the primary providers of health and human services, especially for our most vulnerable neighbors. This is the only way we will end homelessness. Every single level of government must acknowledge that what we've been doing isn't working and come together to invest in what is. In San Jose, we currently dedicate 3.5% of our city budget, about $220 million a year, to addressing homelessness, prioritizing immediate, pragmatic solutions. Our county, with an annual budget more than double ours, spends less than 1%, about $90 million a year on these types of solutions, even as homelessness remains our shared constituents' number one concern and priority. If our county matched our commitment, just 3.5% of its $12 billion budget, we could end unsheltered homelessness not just in San Jose, but across the entire county, and that's the 6th most populous county in the state of California. And this isn't just rhetoric. Our housing department, as was mentioned, has done the math. We have built a sophisticated mathematical model that shows that for about $250 million in one-time capital costs and about $230 million in ongoing operating costs, we could build out and operate an interim housing and shelter system that would achieve functional zero unsheltered homelessness in San Jose, the largest city in Northern California. Because we've done the math, we know what it will actually take to end homelessness and how to get there. Now we need every city to do the same, which is why I'm proud to co-sponsor Senator Becker's SB 606. It requires cities and counties that apply for state homelessness funds to present real, data-driven plans to end the era of encampments. If every city did the same math we have, something would be very clear very quickly. The status quo approach will never lead to the results our residents are demanding. We need to be honest. Our overly narrow and restrictive interpretation of housing first simply isn't scaling fast enough, and it's not going to achieve the goal. And as a result, we are literally condemning people to die on our streets for lack of an alternative. In San Jose, it costs $1 million in public subsidy to build just one unit of permanent affordable housing. It takes 6 years to build. We're building dignified interim housing with in-suite bathrooms and even, in some cases, kitchenettes for a fraction of the cost, less than a fifth of the cost and a fifth of the time. In fact, I think Dignity Moves is about to open a site that they've built in 12 months. We need both interim and permanent housing, but we need to start with solutions to get more people out of unsafe, unsheltered conditions faster, and we need counties' commitment to these solutions to incentivize smaller cities to do the right thing and build interim housing and shelter. Because it's not progressive to leave people to live and die on our streets, and it's certainly not compassionate. We can't wait for the perfect solution when people are dying on our streets. And we know we can end unsheltered homelessness. We've done the math. What we need now is shared responsibility. And that's what SB 16 would require. That counties with populations over 200,000 people would fund 50% of their city's homeless center operating costs. It brings fairness, coordination, and a sense of partnership to a system that is often fragmented and underfunded. And building on this notion of collective responsibility, SB 606 from Senator Becker makes sure that every city does its part, because we're already seeing cities ban camping and push the problem down the road to the cities that are trying to do the right thing, that are building housing and shelter. We need to make sure everybody is part of the solution, because we will succeed or fail as a state. Everyone must do their fair share. That's what these bills are about. San Jose is ready. We're building. We're investing. We've done the math. We're going to end unsheltered homelessness, but we can't do it alone. So thank you to Senators Blakespear and Becker for helping us build a statewide framework for ending unsheltered homelessness. Just briefly in Spanish, and then I'll pass on the mic. Buenos días y gracias a todos por estar aquí. La falta de vivienda no se detiene en los límites de la ciudad. Necesitamos que todos los niveles de gobierno trabajen juntos. San José está haciendo su parte, pero no podemos hacerlo solos. Apoyo las leyes de los senadores Blakespear y Becker para que ciudades y condados compartan la responsabilidad. Es hora de trabajar juntos, cada ciudad y cada condado, para poner fin a nuestra crisis de personas sin hogar. Gracias a todos. Thank you all very much. With that, I am so honored to hand the mic over to Elizabeth Funk, President and CEO of Dignity Moves, who's been an incredible partner to the city of San Jose and helped inform our strategy. We're doing some great work together. Elizabeth, thank you for being here.
I am personally exhausted of hearing people talk about homelessness as a crisis in rhetoric and then not in actions. To be fair, our state spent $24 billion on homelessness in the last few years, and yet homelessness rose. Why? Our state is the leader in so many things. I'm so proud to be a Californian. We lead in innovation. We lead in human services. We lead in so many ways. Why do we lead the nation in unsheltered homelessness? It's unacceptable. Part of the reason is our idealism. We have beautiful, idealistic building codes and ideals of the perfect solution for everyone. And the problem is, the perfect isn't possible. Today, our system prioritizes all of our funding, the predominant funding, into permanent housing for people. And let's be clear, only permanent housing ends homelessness. And yet, the average cost across California to build a single unit of affordable housing exceeds $800,000. In our big cities like San Jose and San Francisco, where we need it the most, it exceeds $1 million per unit. Nationally, the average cost to build a single unit of affordable housing is $250,000. Of course, we have a surge of homelessness on our streets. I think one of the biggest reasons that we have this surge is people don't think it's possible to end. We all nod, and then we chip away at the problem. Even our elected officials and our policies talk about ameliorating, improving, making progress. No one until now has had the courage to step up and say, end it. We're ending this problem. We're not going to chip away at it. We're going to end it. Ending unsheltered homelessness, which, to be fair, is not ending homelessness writ large, but it's the most visible, the most inhumane, and the most urgent. Now we have elected officials saying, we're going to end this problem. And you know what? The biggest thing that needs to happen is to at least define what the number is. Once you've done the math and you've decided how many beds you need so that no one needs to resort to being on the streets, you're halfway to solving it. You look at the number, in San Jose, it's $255 million in one-time upfront costs about what they spend annually on homelessness today. Granted, there's ongoing operating costs for a while, but you've got a number, 255. Now there's a finish line. And you know what happens when you have a problem that has a solution? Everything opens up. The city can put what they can on the table. The county needs to put what they can on the table. The private sector and philanthropists start putting their chips in, because now there's a number that ends the problem. I can't tell you how much that's a game changer, simply naming it. So SB 606 is going to require regions to name it, to do the math. What would it take to end unsheltered homelessness? First and foremost, that sends a very strong message that in California, we've got different issues and we've got different priorities. We're going to end the suffering on our street so that the streets are not the waiting room while the permanent housing that we need can get built. The second thing it does is reminds local municipalities of the tools they've got. The state's done everything they can. They've given the Shelter Crisis Act that allows municipalities to waive all local rules and ordinances, shall waive, that in any way might hinder, delay, or impede their ability to deal with the crisis. Cities are supposed to be waiving everything that's not necessary. And yet we've got cities charging $1 million for a project that we're doing. They are hearing appeals twice, even though the appeals are not supposed to be heard at all because it's by right. They're not using the tools that they have. And so while we can't legislate psychotherapy, we can't remind them that they have these tools available, we're going to ask them every year to report on whether they're using them. I think that's going to go a long way towards raising eyebrows and saying, we could have waived that? Why didn't we? And then the third thing is small cities need to be helping and doing their part. And they want to do their part. Small cities don't want people on the streets, and yet they're not eligible for funding from the state. What can they do? They don't have the budgets to build shelters, and they shouldn't build shelters. But what they should do is be at the table with the county and with the big cities, designing a strategy together. That's how we're going to have the small cities be doing their part, because it's all hands on deck. And part of that all hands on deck is obviously for the counties to open the purse strings. In our country, the counties are responsible for the supportive services and for social services and behavioral health. But when you see somebody sleeping in front of Starbucks, I'll bet you don't call your county supervisor. You call the city mayor. And counties have the money and cities have the problem. They need to be working together. What people don't realize is the cost to operate these services, these sites, about 50% of it is stuff the county is already supposed to be doing. But they do. They provide case management off-site. When the person needs to see their case manager, they got to get on a bus and go see their case manager. The cities realize you need to have those supportive services there, the wraparound services there. And how inefficient is it for the city to be providing wraparound services when the county's also providing them across town? Obviously, the county needs to be providing those where the city is. We can't afford to squander the resources with that kind of inefficiency. And it creates the collaboration that's going to be the all hands on deck solution that we need to finally end the problem of unsheltered homelessness. Who am I introducing? Sorry. I would like to next introduce my friend Daniel Conway from the California Grocers Association.
Thank you all. Daniel Conway with the California Grocers Association. Elizabeth is a great partner and a tough act to follow. But again, I want to thank everyone for being here today because, as has been mentioned, this homelessness crisis has been decades in the making and unfortunately has just reached a point where it can no longer be ignored. This is something that truly touches every corner of our state. And, you know, for our grocery industry, we are cornerstones of our communities. We see what's happening in our neighborhoods, and we've seen how too often the neediest amongst us are left outside on the street to struggle on their own and fend for themselves. And so as this crisis has played out, we've seen the state step up. We've seen them put additional tools on the table. And now it's time for our local governments to step up and fill the void that we're seeing here when it relates to interim housing. I want to thank Senator Blakespear and Senator Becker because I think the tools that they're putting on the table today are some of the missing pieces that we've seen. Now, with Functional Zero, we have a clear destination in mind, right? Our goal shouldn't be to manage a crisis. Our goal should be to end a crisis. And so, as Elizabeth mentioned, I think by putting these numbers on the table and having a clear sense of what it's going to take to house people, you'll be able to galvanize your community. You'll be able to galvanize your cities, galvanize your counties, get your nonprofits to step up, and get your business community to step up. Because I think for the business community, this is something that we've seen not only, it's taking down our downtowns. I mean, it's taking down our neighborhoods. It's taking down shopping centers because people don't feel safe. They don't feel safe coming to stores. Employees don't feel safe coming in. And so we need to do something that's going to really send a signal to folks that there's a way that we can not only improve the lives of the people who need it the most, but also improve our communities in the broadest sense. And so we look forward to working with them to not only put functional zero on the table and make it an attainable goal, but more importantly, we see too much finger pointing at the local level between our cities and our counties over who is responsible for these people. And unfortunately, again, these are people who are struggling, dying on our streets, and unfortunately, they're treated as a line item in a budget saying, no, they're not mine, they're yours kind of thing, right? They're all of ours. And so I think the point is we need to step up. I'm so pleased to be a part of this coalition and be working with two esteemed senators as well as one of our great mayors, because the time is up. People are suffering and dying, and the voters of California have had enough. So look forward to working with you all this year. All right. And now I'm going to introduce my good friend from the Bay Area Council, Adrian Covert.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you and good morning. First, I'd like to thank Senator Becker and Senator Blakespear for introducing SB 16 and SB 606, which will help coordinate and prioritize those near-term actions and near-term solutions that we've just heard so much about to end the era of encampments, bring people indoors, and save lives. So for the past century, California's greatness has rested in the belief that it is here where your dreams can come true. This is the place you need to be. But as the governor himself has said, no amount of progress can camouflage the most pernicious crisis in our midst, homelessness. Unsheltered homelessness, the tents, the tragedy is a uniquely California problem. California provides just 4 shelter beds for every 10 homeless residents in state. That's the second lowest rate in the United States, and far below the national average. This particular failure, our inability or refusal to provide interim solutions quickly, to provide what should be one of life's most essential needs, shelter, sanitation, and safety, has come at tremendous and ultimately unsustainable cost. It costs us in lives lost needlessly. Lives like Rebecca Road, a 40-year-old mother of 5 who, not far from here, was killed when a tree fell on her tent during a winter storm. Had shelter been available, she might be with us today. There are thousands of cases like that across the state every year. Unnecessary deaths due only to the exposure of elements resulting from our lacking 49th out of 50 states in how much shelter we provide relative to the need of our homeless population. So it costs us lives. It also costs us resources. Billions of dollars spent on cleaning encampments that could have gone to housing, to healthcare, or to shelter to move people along in their lives. And it ultimately undermines, unsheltered homelessness undermines the economic foundation from which all public programs ultimately spring. When a convention decides to move to Vegas because the participants don't feel safe, or when a founder of a promising small business decides he's going to grow in Texas because they can't handle the scenes of despair anymore in their downtown, that's not just the loss of a convention or the loss of a business. That's a loss of tax revenue to fund the permanent supportive housing and the shelter and the health care that we need. Ultimately, having 120,000 people without shelter, seemingly without hope, it makes people question. It makes them question whether or not California really is the place where dreams can come true, which is why we have to solve it. And that's why the Bay Area Council is proud to stand with Senator Blakespear and Senator Becker and Mayor Mahan and our other partners to co-sponsor these bills and to prioritize near-term action to bring people indoors and save lives. So thank you very much. Thank you, Senators. And with that, let me introduce Samaj White. Please.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Samaj. I am a resident at First Step Communities. It is a transitional housing for young adults age 18 to 24. I just want to shed a little light on the program and let people know it's a place for everyone, no matter your race or beliefs. You could just call 211 to receive help, and I've been there since July. I've actually had lots of helpful resources provided to me, mentally, physically, help getting jobs and things of that nature. For me, the Grove has given me a place of growth. I've experienced a lot in my lifetime, and in this chapter, the Grove has been a major lifeline for me. Mentally, I've had help provided for me through friendships and professional therapists that is provided by the program. Physically, the Grove provides a safe space for me, a warm bed in my cabin where I can be alone to think and feel safe. As you see in these pictures, we have our own space with a lock on the door, things like that. People do take for granted, just a bed, a shower, basic human needs, but you could get it at the Grove. But physically, I'm sorry. It's a place where I could shower and call home at night and always know I could be there. I feel like, excuse me. I'm so sorry. The Grove is a place that housed 180 people last year, and I know this year it'll probably double by that. We have new glamified cabins. They're not as big as these ones, but ours have been sponsored by people, and they've just actually beautified the cabin. The cabin that I had at first, it was just a 6x12, correct? 6x12 cabin, and they've really glamified the place. You can see pictures at First Step Communities on our social medias and things of that nature. And I just want to go back into saying that programs are really important. The people there, the case managers, the creative director, we have Alex and Ben who invited me here to speak, and they just really make a difference. So thank you for everyone being here and everyone that do put. Miss Elizabeth, I'm sorry, let me go back to say that. Elizabeth really touched my soul. The way she got up here with all that passion and like it made me want to tear up. People like all y'all really mean a lot to me. So thank you for having me, and thanks for taking the time to care. That's it. Thank you.
That was really great. You're so sweet. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Samaj, for speaking from a personal perspective about what it means to live in some of these places. We really appreciate you coming today. Thank you. So that is the end of our press conference. We'll take any questions from the media. If you wanted to ask anyone here a question, you're welcome to.
When is it coming before a committee, Madam Senator?
My bill is coming up April 22nd, and Senator Becker's bill. Do you know when it's coming?
29th, I believe.
April 29th. Any other questions? Okay. Well, thank you everybody for coming.